So, good afternoon and welcome to this very, very important conversation on the eve of Women's Day. We're here to discuss how to advance women towards better board representation. And I'm so proud to have such a stellar panel with me right now. And I know all of them are celebrities in their own right. But since this is going to be on LinkedIn Live and for posterity's sake, I will just give a couple of sentences about each of our panelists. We have Dr. Parthasarathy over here with us. He's a business legend. He has been the group CFO of Mahindra and responsible for many transformative business decisions and businesses that he has grown. He is an independent director on large companies like the Life Insurance Corporation of India, NIIT. But what brings him here is his actual passion for women's empowerment, because he thinks that if women were to participate more, the GDP would be up by 25%. And so with his belief, it's not a surprise, therefore, he sits on the board of CloudNine hospitals. He works with SEWA closely because he is dedicated to it with missionary zeal. Thank you so much, Dr. Parthasarathy, for being here. Then we have over here with us Kamolika Perez. And she's a corporate head honcho, if I may say. And she's been the SARC head of Google Clouds India, but currently in her current avatar, she is the group vice president and managing director for ServiceNow. And I think Kamolika is a combination of been there, done that, because she's been voted as one of the most admired women leaders. But given that she works with AI and emerging technologies, I think there's a long, long way ahead for her to go from here too. So thank you so much, Kamolika, for sparing your time to be here. Then we have over here with us, Sameer Madan. Sameer is the money maestro over here, if I may say. He's with right now Agilent Technologies, and he understands money matters the best. But what brings him here is not that. It's probably his passion to action out, that women pick up these skills to make their advance into the corner office and to boards faster and better. Thank you so much, Sameer. We know that at G100, you're always there to support us, and thank you so much for that. So for all of us, advancing women onto the boards, doing our bit is kind of like a background music, or I would say a side hustle. But then we have somebody over here for whom this is the real deal, and that is Neha with us. Neha is the founder of MentorMyBoard, and she actively works on creating a community of directors, 100,000 directors by 2030, Neha. So she is day in and day out, thinking, breathing in and out and working towards this purpose. So who could be better than Neha to talk about it as she works over here? So thank you so much, all of you. I think the composition of this panel is absolutely amazing. So let me just cut to the chase, and I'm glad I've just taken 4 minutes to do that. Dr. Parthasarathy, I'd like to start with you. You've been on boards, you've seen women being there. Tell us, does it make a difference? What is the empirical evidence that we have to say that it makes a board richer when you have women over there?
Yeah, I could very well. First of all, thank you very much for having me here, and to you, all the panelists and moderator 𝗵𝗂𝗃𝗲𝗄 and all the viewers, a very good morning, and also a very great Women's Day. It is every day is a Women's Day, but let's have one day to remember that occasion by. Yeah. So coming back, so I mean, you ever had a thought about a family without a woman? And why this question? Why should we find empirical evidence in a board? Okay, so I'm kind of saying this is like, have you asked what do men contribute on the board? Why should this question be even asked? Okay, sorry, 𝗵𝗂𝗃𝗲𝗄, it's not at you. It's just our biases working. You're just trying to bring that to the fore. Okay, so they don't have to prove themselves every time, right? I mean, the two Stavels, and both of them I know very well, Kamolika and Neha. They will be very disturbed if I ask them, tell me you are good to be the CEO or VP in your respective companies. So that may be so, but I'll give you how I have enriched by having some of them on board. And this is a board. This is a board which is a services company, software services company, and we were looking at a software engineering as a target group for acquisition. And we are all going, oh no, we have to buy this, but the IRRs quite match. And therefore, can we justify this? And etc. And then this lady quietly sitting, very hesitant. And then I said, hey, can you share your perspective? And then she says, yeah, I thought I was looking at it in a very different way. And what is it? Your parent happens to be an auto company, no? So I said, yeah. So, what about the design of that? Will that help your, parent company? And can they co-invest in this? Not just, just say, can you not have a joint venture with them to buy this company? Yeah. And joint venture is not a term she used. I'm using it because I am financially oriented. Finally, we did buy that company. I think the automotive company's designs are now influenced by this engineering company we buy, and it has led to great amount of success. And the software company, with God's grace, is doing great. So I'm no more on that company, but I will never forget our contribution. Yeah. So it changed the course of what we were looking for, and so we do that. Second is I'm on a board where only two independent director, me and this lady. Again, I'll not name her, and we play a good jugalbandi. She starts, I finish. I start, she finishes, and all of them say, "Have you come prepared?" And we have never spoken before the board meeting, any board meeting. And I was having an independent director meeting with us, and she says, "I understand you, Partha." And I said, "So do I." But this is what perspective makes. Will not two males make that same kind of things? I suppose it could, but I'm just saying how the perspectives would be similar in when two people are there, and how it is different and she comes in, and then I quickly understand. Now I have to think like that, and then I finish the sentence, and she takes my words and changes it. So these two things to say that the boards will be better for having diversity, and gender is probably the biggest of them. Not the only thing I think board should have, but it's the biggest thing that it should have. Yeah. So I'll stop here. You have been very strict with your 3-minute rule.
Not really, not really. This is just to. So, thank you so much for first pointing out that the question itself is wrong. And I thank you for that, because from there starts the change in perspective. But since I started with that, Samir, I would still want you to just comment on how has your experience been. I will not ask for empirical evidence now.
Experience felt like we do in daily life. I mean, it's not very different. What is a corporate board? I mean, it's just an extension of daily life. And the fact that the Companies Act came up with this regulation, we all know that laws follow when the society has moved on. So the society has moved on, they've accepted women probably even better than what men were. And some data points I'd like to share is that there's a very nice report which BlackRock came up with. I think it's called Investing in Financial Literacy for Women for Improved Performance. And BlackRock, being an investment firm, they came up with return on asset as a parameter for companies across the globe, and how that is different if they have at least two women on their board. Similarly, profitability. Closer home, there's a very nice research paper on the number of companies which have women and their boards. And Nestle was called out, I mean, best performing financial parameters for a company listed in India. And their ability to critique in a very, very affable manner, their ability to prioritize, to kind of understand the business in unique ways. And lastly, what I would call out is crisis management. I think every company, every 2-3 years now, goes through major crisis. And their ability to handle it a lot better with emotional intelligence, with a lot more focus is much better than men. The last example I'll give is Rolls-Royce. It's chaired by a lady called Anita Frew. And when Pratt and Whitney was having these turbine engine problems, and how she could take the entire industry along and not just pounce on its competitor to browbeat them. So, women directors are absolutely a must. There's enough empirical evidence, not that we needed it, as Parthasarathy sir said.
Yes, yes, so true. And this is the age of collaboration, actually. So yesterday, in fact, I was at a innovation summit, and they discussed about how FMCG companies are all working towards reducing the negative impact of plastic, which is there. And the first thing which was pointed out is that all FMCG companies need to work with one another. Because if in case they don't, then it again leads to, I mean, the problem doesn't get solved. So this is the day of collaboration that we are looking at now. And true. So as Dr. Parthasarathy says, as Mr. Sameer Madan says, it seems to be a no-brainer, but yet we don't see women out there. So let me ask the women here. So if it's such a big no-brainer, what are the obstacles? Why are they not there then? Kamolika.
Yeah, great question. And I think, thank you to Dr. Parthasarathy and of course to Sameer for starting us off and really talking about, the vision or the dream or the where we want to go in terms of working in organizations. But the reality is that we are very far from that, right? If you look at the statistics, the graduates coming out of, colleges in India, over there, the balance is almost 50-50. So 52% is actually women graduates, right? Which I think is a great thing. It's a wonderful, testament to the progress that's been made in bringing, women and obviously getting them educated in the higher educational fields. But when you come to the board level, only about, I think, 17 to 19%, of board positions are with women. So clearly there's something happening along the way that's really causing this drop, in the presence of women at all levels. And, it starts from something very fundamental. We talked about bias, right? When we talk about, if I ask you now to close your eyes and imagine, a leader, a general in the field, a strategist, a visionary, for men and women both, our picturization of that automatically shifts to a man, right? It's because of the stories we've been brought up on. It's because of the legends and mythologies and everything that has been part and parcel of us, growing up, right? Every time a woman takes a step into leadership, it changes that bias a little bit, right? And in any certain segments where you have a lot of, women leaders, you find that bias shifting. So it's very, very important that, we can talk of bias, but participation is the one thing that pushes, bias away. And for us to be aware and to really work, as far as, really negating that bias is concerned. The other thing that I would like to say is, apart from bias, there's also the very real burden of social cultural expectation that falls on women, right? And very often the leaky pipeline of women in management is actually attributed to this, that women have familial responsibilities, elder care of children, all of that, which actually makes them either, leave the job or shy away from, mainstream P&L roles where they can actually be a contender, let's say, for the CEO's position one day, right? And I think that's a very, very real, factor. It's something that exists in our society. I think there has been a lot of awareness, a lot of talking. I think organizations have taken steps to try and see how they could best support the women. And, my belief in all of this has been is that for any organization who stands by a woman during these milestones in her life, marriage, childbirth, elder care, all of that, she tends to remain very, very loyal to that organization, right? So I think trying to find out ways that we can actually, try and lessen the burden that women carry, because they carry, two burdens in that sense. That's not to say that they don't get help. I'm sure they get help, but it's just one of the things that weighs on a woman's mind whenever she's asked to take on a higher position, right? But just to end, Swapnalekha, I'll talk about one thing that comes from my own experience, and this is when I was a rookie. So I was in consulting, and I was really sort of the junior most person in the room at that point of time. And as very often happens with junior consultants or with women, you go into these very high-powered meetings in boardrooms, but you kind of sit in one corner because your seniors are speaking, and you don't really want to contribute because you're not sure what you'll say will be right, right? And I was very lucky at that stage in my career. I was blessed with manager leaders who told me, go in there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you're the youngest in the room. You have a point of view. You have the data. You have something to say. So go ahead and say it. And, even if it is, wrong, or even if it is something that somebody can correct, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the outcome or the discussion will be the richer for having your viewpoint in it, right? So just drawing from my own experience, I think it really helps to have that person who pushes you off the deep end and says, go fly, spread your wings, So I think that I was lucky enough to have that.
Oh, true. You just noticed Dr. Parthasarathy mentioned about the woman, the lady who pointed out on a collaborative opportunity, and he said that she was hesitant, and at that time he prodded her on to respond, and that's the kind of support actually women need at the board. And I also think what you said is that a picture is really worth 1,000 words. So the pictures that we float out into the public space have to be representative of women doing all kinds of roles. And I just remember it's just about 3 or 4 days back, we had a Times of India full page article on some kind of an oil where they showed that this was a kitchen and there was a dining table where all the men were sitting and all the women were either cooking or serving. Truly not representative of urban India right now. So how much responsibility does a wider ecosystem need is something that we need to talk about and call it out. I think call it out. That's very important. And the last bit that you spoke about was support. I have been in HR and I dropped out at a very, at a level probably which I had reached very early on in life at 35, and I dropped out because of the lack of support, and I made a choice at that time. So I think workplaces are designed actually keeping men in mind because they used to be more in numbers. So I think we really need a relook at the way we are designing workplaces to see, are they really supportive of women?
Absolutely.
For example, if a woman has children going to school at 7 in the morning, she can very well come to work at 7 in the morning and can work on till probably 1 o'clock and go back, spend time, and then again work the few hours. So how flexible are we? That's there. And the last bit that you said, I totally agree that if an organization supports a woman, she stays around, but then usually then there's a pay gap. I have a problem with that too. So that gets leveraged in a very actually bad manner. So I thank you so much for bringing all of those things out. Neha, what has been your experience?
So thanks, 𝗕𝗏𝗃𝗲, first of all, and Kamolika has brought out some wonderful points actually to capture, all 3 dimensions that I wanted to cover. But still going ahead, there are 3 M's which I feel are the major obstacles in the woman's lifestyle when it comes to, in the board positions. So one is the matriculation of your children. One is your marriage, which comes before matriculation of your children. And the other one is the menopause time. So very recently, I think just yesterday, we saw an article that L&T chairman has now announced, a 1 day off for women who are who have their periods. So these kind of,
Neha.
No. So these kind of some of the policies that change makers bring in need to be thought through, because once when you announce these kind of leaves, it becomes very obvious to people around you. And then it also gives them a reason to not having you in their team. So culturally, we've seen that, in the sales field or in such fields, men would hardly prefer women coming into that field. And if we add on to those reasons for not being there, then it becomes even the more a leaky bucket for people or women to get onto those board roles. So it is really, really important for us to be conscious about it and to call out for such things, as you rightly mentioned, 𝗕𝗏𝗃𝗲, that, calling out is really important. One another very important thing is the perception of leadership, which Kamolika had brought out, that, we always have role models who are men, or whenever we are, asked to do that visualization exercise as well, the critical roles or the strategic roles that come out as a CEO or the leader of the organization, you will always visualize a men, because we've not been brought up with those kind of stories, maybe in the early days of our life, where we see women as those role models. And I very clearly remember, Smriti Mandhana, who was a cricketer, I would say, the female celebrated cricketer. And she mentioned that, when she was playing cricket, she did not find anyone as a role model who were women to grow up with, looking at them. And hence she used to follow Virat Kohli and other male counterparts. And that is how she was brought up. So definitely these are a few things, but definitely pay gap is one very, very important thing, because at the same level, men and women are not paid equally. Definitely, this is also the case in the boardrooms. So if you find, the independent directors in boardrooms, men and women independent directors are remunerated separately. I can observe and I can feel that, right? So it starts right from the lower level till the topmost level in the organization culture. And unless we become vocal about it, we are, speaking about these real-time issues, I think, along with our men allies. And that is why I loved being here on this panel with Dr. Parthasarathy, with Mr. Sameer, because they are those vocalists who bring out those things to the people. And I'm really happy that you've brought out such a topic, Swapnika. Thank you for this.
I just love this 3 M's of matriculation, marriage, matriculation, and menopause. Yeah. Because, I lead an organization in the area of mental health. And, there's a stress scale in mental health where a toothache is the smallest and losing a loved one to a violent means of death is the highest. So there's a gradation. And all these life events that we're talking about, which is marriage, which is education of children, changing a job, these are all events which cause a lot of stress, both to men and women. But unfortunately, or should I say, it's a social construct because women are better disposed to, they carry the strain of these stressors in our life. And at that time, I think it's important for organizations to also support. So, Sameer, I'd come to you. The way you're speaking, I can make out that you bat a lot for women. So how do we get rid of this unconscious bias which is there? There's a lot of work which has to be done by the entire ecosystem. As I said, we all have our responsibilities. What can organizations do and what can leaders do? Because we are all sitting in positions of influence. What are some of the things that we could do about it?
These biases are to kind of be addressed by one storytelling. So I'll tell you that, one conference I attended, and Soma Mandak from SAIL, who was the chairwoman, she said that I've been asked this question that when you joined SAIL, the boardroom had a placard for chairman, not chairwoman or chairperson. Did you feel intimidated or was it disturbing? And she was asked this question almost in excess of 100 times during the first 2 months. And she said, no, I was not intimidated, not disturbed, because if I fall for such small things, how do I achieve my mission? So yes, there are biases, but we have to address them by real life examples. People can relate with real life examples. Now, coming to what we can do as leaders, as the corporate senior people in corporates, the first thing is identify women from mid-level. Don't get into this purple squirrel syndrome. You heard of this purple squirrel syndrome?
No, tell us more.
So this is a syndrome, where not just for women, but Kamolika is nodding her head. I think, she probably knows that. And, you end up wanting a non-existent Mr. or Ms. Perfectionist for every role. There is no Mr. Perfectionist or Ms. Perfectionist. So you have to make a beginning and identify a candidate for will, not for skill. Because skill I can teach you, will I cannot. And dare I say, will is probably higher in women. And so in organizations like where I work, we make sure that we don't have a quota that you need to have so many women. But for every new role we head out, we make sure that we get similar women and men resumes. We make sure that folks who are interviewing are from both the genders. The second thing is we have a formal mentoring program where we invite women as guests to observe how we conduct board meetings. We give them exposure to board meetings, not for the parent company, but for our subsidiaries and group companies, which could be an investment company, holding company, just for the small sake of it, but to understand how the whole thing works. And lastly, I would say that the more we talk about it, we also have to be careful that we're not furthering the stereotype. So, that's a trap which we fall into. And both of us, which is women and men, have to play an equal role. Women feel that men don't have them. Men also have inhibitions and how do I go and help? And so both the hands have to work together to address it, and it is getting addressed. Let's get out of the syndrome that there is no movement. Of course, the needle has not even moved 1 full minute. It's just moved a few seconds, and we have the entire 12 hours on the clock. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, this is something I always bat for, because see, empathy has to be from both the sides. Women also have to empathize with men not getting it, because it was never there in their ecosystem to get it. So probably it's our turn to speak out, ask for help, point out where we are feeling actually minimized, because it's easier, as you said, that it's easier to cater to a gender stereotype and say men are dismissive. Probably they are not. We need to do a little more prodding than what we are doing. So what you're saying is true. While we are doing this, too much of doing anything actually doesn't serve the purpose, right? You said it so well. Neha, what has been your experience? You've worked with so many boards. How do you deal with this? I'm sure you must be working with boards of even smaller organizations where women are getting in, or what has been your experience? What are the stories that you've heard?
So honestly, I would like to start from the story of Miss Sudha Murthy, which she generally narrates, that she had written a letter to Mr. J.R.D. Tata when she saw that advertisement that, women need not apply as engineers, and how she got into Tata Group company and how she served as a woman engineer to become the first woman engineer in the Tata Group was something that was awe-striking when we grew up for us, right? But we have role models now who have come in. Role models like Indra Nooyi, role models like, so many other women in the system today who we look up to as role models. Indra Nooyi speaks really beautifully well about sisterhood. How is that we create those sisterhoods around and amongst us to support each other? How is that women support other women to come on boards? So these are the narratives that are shifting today. We can see those narratives shifting today, as Sameer rightly mentioned, that we must stop speaking about women are not being represented well or something of that sort. Women are being represented. It's just that the shift that has happened in the past was a little slower, but now I see that the shift is happening at a good amount of pace. Because we had no women leaders in the past, it will take a little time for us to get there. But since we are seeing more and more women coming up to those management roles, I'm sure women coming in the boardrooms will also become, the in thing for us. And we are already at 20% of diversity in the boardrooms in India as on today, compared to the 7% in 2013. So when Companies Act 2013 came in, which mandated women directors to be in place, we had only 7% as a role in the boardroom. But today we are standing at somewhere around 19 to 20% in the boardrooms. So this shift has been a little gradual, but now I see that more and more women are coming into those management roles and in the senior levels. And definitely boardrooms is no far away for them to kind of conquer it. I wouldn't say conquer it in the bad way, but definitely to be there for them to hear out their voices, or, to share their voices. So definitely the shift has happened, and more of it is in pipeline, which we will see in the near future.
I know. And I think the case is there, that they will be there. They're already being there. It's about actually having a voice and being effective.
100%. And creating that sisterhood for other women, so that if there is one woman in the boardroom, why not have one more? Because if there are two, they would be able to, share their thoughts even better.
Absolutely.
So those things are something that, law should not make it mandatory, but we as women in the boards can kind of, speak about.
Very true, very true. And I think, it's important for us to now actually take the next step that we've made our entry in. How do we actually make an indelible impact in the positive way? So, so the next thing that I wanted to ask you, Dr. Parthasarathy, is that, governance, compliance, business acumen, communications, relationship management, all these things are industry-specific knowledge. These come naturally to most leaders and women also, but usually many women have this inhibition with numbers and financials. Though I would say that after the ICICI barrage, that Dr. Kamath brought in of women, the image that we have of bankers, fortunately today, is that many of us think it's a woman there. But other women leaders who are coming, how important do you think is to understand financial statements and financials to actually be a very positively contributing member onto the board of an organization?
Thank you. I think it's a very important question to address. But before I do, I just want to digress a little bit into the earlier question of bias. I just want us to be a little bit more pragmatic. Men have had centuries of headroom into doing what they did. Women have started very late, right? They are into that one. If I were to conquer the matriculation, we have conquered, right? Now we are 50% plus. These are only two more things to conquer, and we will get there. Okay. The idea, what you said, is probe. Huh? So I'm just saying, let's not beat ourselves up why we are not there as yet. We are not there because of this, and because of one more thing which I will deal with in your subsequent. I'm sure it will come up sooner than later. And if it not, I have my closing comments anyway, where I'll get my two beaten. But coming back to this question, what is business all about? It's all about, yield growth. Yeah, two things. Yeah, yield is, what does it yield for all these stakeholders, and what is this? And how do you measure yield? You measure it in rokda, in money terms, in rupiah paisa. So now you can't say that, I'll sit on a board and try to improve yield and growth. Yeah. And growth, and I'm not only talking growth in ESG is also a growth sphere. Diversity is also a growth sphere. So that's why I said yield and growth. Okay. So if you look at this and say, I don't know how to read financial statements, but I'll do. The funny thing is, even the government company law says you have to read financial statement. Nobody's, just saying who can read financial statement. Neha, correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't say you have to understand financial statement. But humor apart, if I think we are well spent, I mean, if you are going to be on a board, it's worth your time to understand financial statement. You don't need to understand accounting standards and auditing standards, but you need to understand how to understand financial statements. It's simple as a layman, as a investor, as a protector. Because if you are protecting stakeholder and you don't understand what you are protecting, you can't be on board. So I would urge people like Neha and everyone spend inordinate amount of time on financial, understanding, literacy. Yeah, let them be more focused on that. Let them say how to read, how to see notes to account and say, is there anything wrong with the statement? So it's important for them, and then they can apply that mind. But this is not an desirable. It's an absolute essential for not just women, everybody in the board, but specifically for women who come in, they must come in prepared for this. Yeah. Not an expert, but at least understand numbers. Okay. Don't do a number on me, but please understand numbers.
I like that bit about reading and understanding numbers.
Yeah.
So I know that Sameer, you also carry the same views as Dr. Parthasarathy. I've heard in conversations. How do we go about actually achieving it? What should organizations do, and what should women do to skill themselves up?
Let me give a piece of statistic. I'm not saying chartered accountancy is the only way to read numbers, but do you know what is the percentage of women who become chartered accountants nowadays? Can you guess? Out of 100 who become CAs, how many of them are women? I'm just trying to prove
I think
that the
it's
change has already
55
happened.
to 60% of women who are already CAs.
So in every fresh batch, close to 48% are women.
Yeah.
And this number was less than 10, even 10 years back.
Hmm.
In terms of number of enrollments to the chartered accountancy course and its cost and management accountancy and company secretaries, primarily following the same directional trend. So the change is already there.
Oh.
So I think,
Sameer, you'll have to repeat. You'll have to just repeat. We lost you for half a minute.
Okay. So understanding the numbers is very important, as Dr. Parthasarathy said. The ability to convert numbers into a story and a story into numbers is even more important. Second thing I'll say is, in today's world, competition is cutthroat. The average time a company spends in the Fortune 100, or you take Nifty in India, is reducing. And this pace is only going to get accelerated. So you got to understand the business environment, interlinkages, combination of numbers, extrapolation, and a story. So how do you start? Yes, you don't have to be a chartered accountant, but you can do short-term courses, whether it's by the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Cost Management Accountants, ACC, they're enough. And YouTube is a great teacher. To begin with, all women who aspire to be on boards or even aspire to be leaders, attend the annual general meeting of companies, attend the quarterly analyst calls, pick up the annual report. It's a wealth of information. Dr. Parthasarathy said, notes to accounts. You can have fabulous numbers and give a caveat in notes to accounts. Oh, if this was this, then the profit would have been down. Understand, why is the most valuable company in India not paying the most amount of taxes? So it's up to you. See, a good teacher teaches the student to teach herself or himself. So the onus is on you. Everything is available. But yeah, numbers through storytelling is my mantra.
I really like that bit. That first understanding the story in the numbers and then the story converted into numbers, because that's what the whole story about yield and growth is all about. Actually,
Business models, everything is a story, and then you put numbers, or you have numbers, you read the story. You have to catch the trend. The trend is your friend.
yeah, so true.
That's
So there's
nice.
been, yeah, so there's been a question which has also come in saying financial literacy is important. What are the other boardroom skills that women ought to have? Dr. Parthasarathy?
Sorry, you kind of repeat.
Other financial skills are there. What are the other skills which women need to have for the boardroom? There's a question which has come on LinkedIn Live by our India chair, Shalini Chopra. So I thought I'll table it right now.
So out of syllabus question, right? Okay. Okay. So in terms of when you're sitting on a board, and for a moment, let's not bring gender into it. When you sit on a thing,
yes,
you need to have
absolutely.
financial understanding. But the other thing is ability to understand what is going on in the company. So whenever anybody is presenting, the ability to absorb, and out of absorption bringing perspectives, and that's when you present a perspective, right? You agree, disagree, add, subtract from that, and so on. So I would say first skill is in terms of saying understand. And for that, some of us can straight sit in the presentation and understand. Some of us needs to read that much more. So I would say first skill is persevere to understand the numbers and then bring out, not numbers, whatever is being presented, and come with your perspective to the boardroom. So that's the first skill I want to kind of that. So second one is in terms of saying on some area, you have to say, I'm going to be good at this, right? Let's take the board. The board will have an audit committee, will have an remuneration committee, NRC.
NRC.
It'll have a risk committee, yeah. It'll have a strategy committee. So it may have some committees, right? So you come with a very clear that I'm going to sit in this committee of this and give value addition. So over and above being board. So that will again give you something. So and get a skill. I'm not talking just about skills and competencies, right? So get, and I'm talking about it not by HR definition, but general. Okay. So if you come with something saying, hey, I can add value in the ESG space, and then actually as a women director, I go and understand ESG a little better. And the more new the field is, the better it is. When Companies Act came new, I told all my subordinates, आज से तुम गुरु नहीं, मैं गुरु हो जाऊंगा. So because till then I used to tell them, तुम गुरु हो, मेरे को बताओ क्या Companies Act क्या कहता है. Because I came from a business background into finance. Okay. So the key thing now, so ESG is a new field you can do. Second is that even is, CSR. They have a lot of perspectives which women can. So please choose a field that you can play. And last but not least, be before going to a board meeting, it's not a skill. I would say this is a requirement. Tell the 5 things you're going to talk about in the board meeting, because all the pre-read comes to you. Yeah, go with the end in mind. मेरे को ये 5 point तो बताना है based on the pre-read I've read. So, and the rest will automatically follow. So some skills, some tips. Yeah.
So, Kamolika, can I add to what Mr. Parthasarathy has just mentioned?
Sure.
So, for example, the basic of the basic skill, which I feel is you come in with your common sense, one, and with your experience in whichever field that you carry, two. Now, why I mentioned common sense and experience together is because, for example, if you are an HR and you are coming into the boardroom, as Mr. Parthasarathy rightly mentioned, you can contribute to 1 or 2 committees that are there in the boardrooms. One is the NRC committee, the nomination and the remuneration committee. One, if you are a strategist, you can also contribute to the strategy. Or maybe the ESG committee as well, right? So these are 2 or 3 committees that you can contribute to very well. You might not be a great auditor and you might not want to be in the audit committee, right? But even if you are seeing the presentation being presented, if you can just see that, the culture of the company, the attrition rate in the company is maybe more than 5 or 7 or 10%, right? And then if you're expecting a sales growth of maybe 40 or 50%, you can definitely question how is it that you're going to achieve. So there comes your common sense with your technical understanding. May you not be from the financial background, but you still understand that if you are being presented with a 10% attrition rate, and if you're projecting a growth of 40% maybe in the sales domain, how is it possible? So you can ask those questions. It might not be something that you're asking to pinpoint someone, but it may more be in kind of, understanding what is that they are projecting and how is that they are going to achieve it. So the putting forth the questions is also very important art and a skill which people must know, not only women, men, women both, the right way to put forth those questions that you want to get your answers to. So that is something that I wanted to add.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Neha. I think both of you have put together a very formidable list of tips, I would say. First, Dr. Parthasarathy mentioned about develop some 1 or 2 areas of expertise where you can actually add value to the board. You needn't know everything. So a little bit of everything is required, but there's one question which is a long answer to get that you have a view on. The other thing I heard both of you say is preparing is non-negotiable. So failing to prepare is actually preparing to fail when you go to the board. So besides what Dr. Parthasarathy said about adding to it, you said learn to also ask the right questions for that. And the third thing which I really wanted to bring to the table and highlight, Dr. Parthasarathy, which you mentioned, I loved it, is that when something new comes in a huge opportunity. It's actually perspective when you look at things. We usually get very scared, very diffident about ourselves, especially with technology changing the way it is. But actually therein lies the opportunity, because all of a sudden it democratizes the entire space. Everybody is at the same place. So as he said that, कल तक आप गुरु थे, आज तो मैं गुरु बन सकता हूँ. So I think that's wonderful. That's
बन सकती हूँ.
बन सकती हूँ.
No, you said the other way. I said this way.
Yeah, true that. So, Kamolika, tell me, you're leading an organization now, and we are seeing how important it is. So, how are you actually doing it yourself, and how do you think we should build the pipeline? And as Sameer said, not at the far end, but start building the pipeline when the building is important.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing it, and how do you think organizations should do it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I think, the pipeline is always on top of anybody's mind, when you're talking about, how women progress and develop, as leadership talent within the organization. And, through my experience, I found a few things, which I thought was important for me to share today. Number one, a lot of, advancing women into leadership roles is thought about in terms of, let's give them inputs, right? Let's teach them networking skills. Let's give them, inputs on, how to run a business. Let's give them inputs on how to speak confidently in public. The woman of today needs no inputs. because she's coming, she's highly educated, she's highly aware, she's highly articulate, she's coming with a lot of, independent worldviews. And of course, there are things she has to learn, which she will pick up in her journey. So it's less about really trying to, improve women, but rather as an organization, removing the impediments in their progress, right? As we rightly said, education, we have seen almost a 50-50, split that exists. Even in engineering colleges, I think it's close to about 30-42% of women. So definitely the movement is gaining, momentum, right? We're seeing women coming in at an intake level. So my first thing would be for any organization at intake level, try to ensure as close to 50-50 as possible, right? And I think that's really important, because then what you're doing is you're bringing in a bunch of, very bright youngsters, and you're giving them the, the opportunity to go and do, their best in the organization. But you're maintaining some sort of a parity, or trying to maintain some sort of a parity there, which will help as they go through the organization. So at least at intake level, you set your principle very clearly. I, in fact, have a personal story to this. So I was once with an organization where at intake level, they had to take a lot of technical people, right? And it was always historically felt that men do better at these jobs because it's a lot of work in remote locations and, installations and all of that, which, only men could do. We actually went completely against the grain, and we said for 2 years, we'll only hire women, right? And it was very interesting. A lot of, doubts about whether we should do this, whether it's the right thing, but it completely changed the complexion of the organization, including the way our customers responded, to the very, very dedicated and passionate young women who joined the team. So I always remember that when it comes to making sure that at intake level, there is parity. The third thing we've already covered, we talked about the 3 M's, the major milestones of a woman's life. If the organization can hold her hand during those milestones, then I think you actually gain a very, very loyal employee and a loyal leader, which I think is worth its weight in gold, in these days. And the last thing that I would say is put women in P&L leadership positions, right? You will find women who are capable, who are maybe a little hesitant about taking that step, because it is a step to leadership. But, at the end of the day, the power of the purse speaks, right? So when you have a woman who's controlling that, in an organization, you will see some of those benefits of having a more inclusive organization, a more participative organization, all the things that we talked about coming through, right? So I think as an organization, you just have to get out of the way of the passionate and dedicated women who are joining, your team.
I hear you, what you're saying. It's so true. And I also believe what you said, the last bit of it is very, very important, both for women listening and also organizations, that a revenue role is very, very important for overall development of leadership. Because then when you're actually in the face of the customer, you really know what business is all about. And usually what happens is that women shy away from whatever reasons it might be and get into what is typically support functions.
Yes,
So I
yes,
think it's very important to take that plunge into front-facing revenue functions. It's irreplaceable as a learning ground for leadership positions in the future.
In fact, if I can add, since you sort of reminded me, so in sales, it's always traditionally seen as a man's job, right? I mean, you have the man who can wine and dine the customer and do the hard negotiations. But I've always found that some of my best salespeople have actually been women, because their ability to empathize with the customer, to have that kind of conversation, you can go and ask them, how are your kids doing? How is their education faring? Those kind of questions that really build a bond. And they're as good at negotiating as anybody else. I mean, anybody who has accompanied their mother to negotiate for vegetables in the market knows that. I mean, women are very, very good negotiators. So for me, it was actually a wow moment to actually realize that, women make as good, sales leaders as anybody else.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are some domains actually which have been gender stereotyped as being places where men succeed. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a realtor in Delhi and one of the biggest ones in town. And that's an area that's got only men in there. And she says that, selling houses is not what we do. We sell homes. And who can sell homes better than women? So why are women not in there? It's something to ponder about. Women make the best food. Why do we think about a man when we think about a chef? Because I think it's very important for some women to actually take the lead and break those images that we have in our minds. I'm very much for what, Sheryl Sandberg keeps on talking about, empowering images of women. And we are responsible to actually create that. So there's one question which has come in, and I think partly we have kind of answered it as to there is Dr. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏𝗃 asked that women are added to boards and committees, but it's usually for a tick in the box, and they are not actually taken very seriously. So whom would I say? Neha, would you want to respond to that? Because you would have seen, you spoke about committees, and is it really true that they are not taken seriously? And if they are not, what should they do?
So, yes, there are places where women are kind of, just there for the sake of tokenism, right? So I will not deny the fact about it, but there is definitely a way out to it. When women themselves are accepting those board positions, they need to understand well before why is it that they are on the board, right? So please ensure that when you're accepting a board position, you know the reason behind them taking you on board. If it is not based on the skill sets that you possess, if it is not based on the experience that you carry, and if it is not based on the value that you will be adding on to the board, I would strongly recommend you not to take up such board positions, because then definitely it is just for the sake of tokenism, right? What we have seen is in India, there are more than 85% of businesses which are family-owned businesses. In these businesses, this is a very common practice because most of the women are either from their own family background or they are friends of their, known family members. So they are there just for the sake of compliance sake and just a tick box activity, what I would say. But if you are a woman who trusts yourself, if you wish to contribute effectively to the boardrooms and you wish your voice to be heard, please ensure that you accept only those board positions which are taking you based on your skill set and the experience that you add to the boards. That is my
Very
I'll
well.
jump in with a couple of comments on this.
Sure.
One is, there is a trust but verify concept where you can say trust them, but verify that they are capable. And then you can say mistrust and crucify. Okay. So these are options that every board has. But women who go in should not worry about any of this. They should be themselves and push. And what you said, probe and prod. Okay. And just don't give up before the fight. I think that'd be the worst thing, right? Should we even join the board? Just we are here to, you're the first one, right? How many women's get medals for India and how many men's get medals for India? So, and these are after the fact we can say this happens, right? But the first women who went there, the PT Usha, who didn't even win a medal, how important is that? So I think please, for heaven's sake, don't give up the fight before the fight happens. Okay, that's one thing I want to say here. And second is, they will always vilify you. It's so easy to push you out on the side. And this happens not only with women, with everybody, every part of sphere. Nobody wants to give up the power and they would like to keep. I even actually had the senior director's dining table and the junior director's dining table. I've seen all this happen. But if we are going to get there, we have to break these myths and break this. And you can only break by only one thing, your perspective. That's what is the board. So please bring that perspective there and things will change. I promise you it will change.
True that. Very well answered. So, Dr. Rajeshwari, I think your question's been answered. Samir, you want to go ahead? Sure.
So one quick thing, there are equal number of men who are on boards just as a tick in the box. So it's not that, women are the only ones. And you'll only break that stereotype, as Dr. Parthasarathy said, by asking the relevant question, by doing your research. And the simplest thing is go prepared at least to ask questions how different you are vis-a-vis the competition. In board meetings, they rarely spend as much of time as they should as to how the competition is doing and is your business going to be relevant. There are enough examples of newbies coming and just shaking up the existing Maharaja, whether it's the paint industry, I'm not going to take names, whether it's the wires industry, whether it's the airline industry. So, get away from men versus women debates. stereotypes. If you add value, you will be accepted. The society has changed. The gender ratio has changed. There are enough newly born girls now. The whole thing has changed. So we need to just move away, Swapnalika, and let's all take a vow that we'll not have this in our minds.
Absolutely. What you're saying is so true. And at this juncture, I just wanted to bring in another kind of women. There are women who are leading their own enterprises and carry a lot of value of having led businesses because they built something ground up. They have a lot of perspective about how business is run. How should women like these who want to influence boards of large organizations make their way into boards like that? So I would depend on Dr. Parthasarathy and Neha to tell us quickly about this as to how do women go about doing this. Neha, a minute, and would you tell us quickly?
Sure. So Swapnalika, first, be there, be vocal, be seen enough as a subject matter expert in whatever field you are is one key area that you are known for. Second, and very important, is that when you are networking, be there at the right forums, right time, and the right place with the right people. So that is the key mantra again, that when you're networking, you have to be with right people, right time, and right place. That helps you get those board positions quickly, easily, and then you can contribute the best because they have seen you contributing in such forums as well. And third, and very important, accept all the leadership roles or the front-end opportunities, as Kamolika was mentioning, that, don't take up those back-end positions or the back-end roles, as you mentioned. Be there in the forefront and lead it from the front so that the world sees you as a leader. So these are the 3 quick tips I can say that, women can have as business owners and leaders.
Okay. So what I've heard from you is being visible. In quantity and quality, always be visible. Dr. Parthasarathy.
Very quickly, if you have to remember that if you have to ask anybody how they got the first directorship job, there will not be a headhunter who gave them. It will be friends and family and friends and well-wishers, right? When you are in organization, when you are there are people who think well of you.
Yeah.
I suggest you focus on those well-wishers to get you the first break. Then make the impact, then you will get many breaks. So simple as friends and family. So like whether you start a business, you need friends and family. You want to get here, you need friends and family. So ask everybody who knows you, who has seen you, who knows your thing, to give you the first break. And then break all barriers.
Wow, that's a simple and very effective one. I'm absolutely sure. So as Neha says that you have to be visible to those friends and family to know what you're actually doing. So it's very important to talk about the work that you do and share with others, because oftentimes I see that even if it's a dinner party which is going on, the men get their share of opportunities to talk about the professional work that they are doing, but women either don't or they shy away. So I think it's time that they went out and spoke about it. So thank you.
I think they do get equal opportunities, but then they shy away is more that I have seen and heard in those,
yes. So whichever way, I think it's working against them. So it's time to, if you have to leverage your friends and family, they need to know how good you are actually.
100%.
So I think it's been such a fantastic discussion. I would just, starting with Kamolika, just give us your closing remarks on what is it that you would want to leave the women who are listening in to make it and advance themselves to the board position.
Yeah. So if I had to probably leave, the audience with one thought, the women in the audience, it's really about, owning the room when you're operating as a leader or as a board member. It doesn't mean that you have to speak the most of everyone. It just means that be a part of the discussion, be at the table, participate, be present, and do it confidently and secure, in your own worth. Because the journey to leadership is actually a chain of one critical meeting after the other. And how you show up is really, really important. So claim your place at that table and make sure that you're speaking as a leader in those interactions.
Thank you so much, Kamolika. I think that's very well said. I could say it from my own experience. The first time is scary. The second time it's less scary. But after n number of times, you really own the room and you own it well. Good. Thank you so much. Dr. Parthasarathy.
Okay. I want to just read out a small poem which I wrote for my wife's 60th birthday and then connect it to the closing comment. सुख दुख के संग्राम में है ये मेरी परम संगिनी, नॉट जस्ट संगिनी, परम संगिनी, जय जया जय श्री घर की पार्वती लक्ष्मी सरस्वती, प्रोटेक्टर, prosperity giver, and the educator. Yeah. And oh, I've not even mentioned caregiver. So it is that audience. You have to remember you have all this. And therefore, when you're going in, probe. Every time probe. So keep, when they say nahi hai, matlab, you know, women, no, I don't want to take. Ask why, kyo, probe. I mean, just don't accept no for an answer. Persevere. So this is the second one. You may not know everything, but perseverance will get you there. And bring, third is perspective. The 3 P's. Probe, perspective, perseverance will get you whatever you want.
Probe, perspective, perseverance.
Yeah.
I made a note of them. The 3 P's after the 3 M's.
Parthasarathy ka kuch to dena chahiye na.
Oh.
You truly
The
are
fourth
the
one is Parthasarathy.
Parthasarathy. That's a good one. And you know, on that note, I would see there was a question from Jennifer who leads our 𝗕𝗏𝗃𝗄𝗏. And she says, what are the strong ways that organizations can combat stereotypes and unconscious biases? I know we don't have the time right now to dwell on it, but I think we need leaders like a Kamolika, like a Neha, like a Dr. Parthasarathy, like Sameer. You place leaders like this, and I think all biases and everything gets actually dealt with.
And
To
me,
having the right
Swapnalekha
people.
also,
Ah.
who brought us together here.
Thank you so much. So, Neha, your closing comments. What would you like to leave as a message for women who are listening in?
So for women in the metro cities, you have all the access to the best of the things. But I will speak about the women who are not from the metro cities, from the B town or the C town, who have those hesitations in themselves. I very profoundly remember this, our Honorable Finance Minister mentioning it in the Women Directors Conclave that we did at the Bombay Stock Exchange. And she said that you have to cross that threshold and see the world turning around for you. So don't wait for anything. Just be there, cross that threshold, and the world will change for you, is my message to all women. Don't be hesitant. Go out and conquer the world.
Seriously, see, perseverance is coming through as such a common theme for all women.
True.
Bat on, yeah. Sameer.
So women already have a seat at the table. For you to make it count, understand the interlinkages of the business flows. The more you realize, is my strength my top line, bottom line, manufacturing costs, selling and general administrative expenses? Because no company can be the leader in every line item of the P&L or balance sheet. So the more you understand the interlinkages, the more you realize that the global economy is there to stay. You have a concept called just-in-time inventories. Now you have just-in-case inventories. So you have to stock up. So from hyper globalization to extreme nationalism. So what you learn today is not valid tomorrow. So women are naturally tuned to learn, unlearn, relearn. Just be the woman you are in your day-to-day life, and you'll be a great board member.
Thank you so much, Sameer. I think, it just it reminds me that how the brain for women are made, the interconnection between the two lobes are so much more, 10 times more than men have. And today, as you're saying, the world needs you to recognize patterns, interlinkages. And women are actually naturally disposed to get that better. So it's actually a natural advantage that we have. So I think it couldn't have been a better closing note than that, Sameer. Thank you so much. And thank you on behalf of G100 to all of you for having allowed us to stir such an important conversation. And believe me, we're going to take this forward with some of the things that you're saying within organizations so that we make the place a little better than what we found them with. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on another edition of this many years later so that we know that we've actually made the difference. Thank you so much.